Todd Golden is setting up the Florida Gators to repeat as national champions next year.
You are Locked On Gators, your daily podcast on the Florida Gators. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Locked On Gators, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free by listening to the podcast and on YouTube. I am Brandon Olson. Happy Wednesday. Find me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work for New York Giants on SI. Today's episode of Locked On Gators is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $250 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And we are talking about how Todd Golden is setting this team up for greatness once again. Going back to back. I'm not gonna do any more of the song to that point. But the Florida Gators are very in on Xavian Lee, the guard from Princeton, and we're not sure exactly when he's going to commit. But at this point, he's taken what we expect to be all of his visits out of the transfer portal. And we've talked about Xavian Lee quite a few times at this point on the show. I am very high on him. I think he's a great point guard. I think he's I think he's great for an analytically oriented staff and an analytically oriented team like Florida is building. And a big part of that is just, I think that Xavian Lee does such a good job distributing the basketball. Truly, I think he does such a good job distributing the basketball and just making the players around him better. And I do think that that's saying a lot, considering we're talking about someone who just played for Princeton, which I'm not trying to knock anybody, but I am saying that that was a team that ranked 177th in the country on KenPom, went 19-11 this year. It's not exactly a star-studded team, but you did have a superstar guard there. Xavian Lee, again, is nationally one of the best guards in or out of the transfer portal. Okay. And I think that now Florida fans should start to try to embrace him, because I do think that Florida fans should feel like they're in a pretty good spot. Look, there have been very few guards in the country that were as ball dominant as Xavian Lee was. And again, this is someone that I've seen a couple people on Twitter try to, because everybody, you want to comp, right? Everybody wants to go, oh, who is he like? And I've seen people try to say Zion Pullen, and I need you to know that the answer to that is no. He is not like Zion Pullen, okay? He's a better scorer. I think he still might even be a better distributor. Maybe doesn't protect the ball as well as Zion Pullen, but I think that Zion Pullen, was just tremendous in that area. He really just protected the ball better than probably anybody else. And Zion Pullen, shot a better percentage, but Xavian Lee shot more threes, more creative threes, and had to put more of the team on his back. I also think that Xavian Lee, well, I don't think that Xavian Lee is a tremendous defender, which is why when I spoke about him the other day, I've said that he is a more consistent defender than Walter Clayton Jr. I do think that he's a better defender than Zion Pullen was. But like I said, again, I don't think he's a tremendous defender. I think he's more consistent than Walter Clayton Jr., but I don't think he's necessarily awesome on defense. Not that he's bad, but not awesome. CBS reported yesterday morning that Xavian Lee was down to Florida and St. John's, which I sent a message to the Insider program. I said, hey, been here before, right? Florida won it, which is obviously Xavian Lee, a very different situation from Walter Clayton Jr. Walter Clayton Jr. was coming home. Xavian Lee is not. But then yesterday, early afternoon, Xavian Lee posted posted a graphic on Instagram that had Kansas in there as well, posted it on his story well after that CBS report came out. So it seems for the time being that this is still a 3-horse race. And I've said it before, I will say it again, I don't think that there's a better guard in the portal Like, I'm not talking about rankings. I don't care about the rankings. I'm not going to bring up that Walter Clayton Jr. was so lowly ranked. I'm not going to bring up that Elijah Martin was so lowly ranked. I'm going to say that I just don't care about the rankings like that. Okay. Especially because I do think that with basketball, a lot of it comes down to being in a system that fits you. It's not just about, oh, yeah, well, I'm just a baller. It is what it is. It comes down to being in a system that fits you. Like Riley Kugel. I think he's got great potential. So I think he's a bucket. But he's not much of a fit for what Todd Golden wants, right? We saw that as he got phased out of the game plan completely. We saw that happen. He then portaled. I don't think we see a similar situation with Urban Klavzar. I do think that Urban Klavzar still has a decent chance of working his way back into it. But I will say that Xavian Lee, I think he's just awesome in terms of talent and fit. I don't think there's a better guard for Florida in the portal. I just don't. I'm sorry. I can't see it anywhere else. It's just he's perfect here. Another thing I wanted to talk about with Xavian Lee and how he's been talked about, because I know that when Kansas got back into the conversation, people just went, oh, Kansas upped the bag, which might be true. Okay. But there's two sides there. There are two things there. One, that might be true, but also CBS could have just been wrong. They could have just had bad reporting there. Two, CBS could have been right, and Kansas could have dropped the bag to get back into the top three, which led people to talk about how I hate that this is, chasing money, chasing a bag. I hate to see that it's a money thing now. Here's the thing. It's always been a money thing. I have 3 words for you if you have an issue with it being a money thing. Get over it. Again, I've talked about this so many times with not just Florida athletes, not just Florida targets, but just players in general. Oftentimes, it is not, highest bidder gets the player. Oftentimes, it is player knows the spots that they're considering. And between those spots, maybe it's a money thing, sure. But the player typically knows these are the coaches I'd want to play for. These are the brands, the logos that I'd want to represent. This is the conference I want to play in. This is a style of play I want to play in. Whatever it is, they usually have some list where they say, hey, these are my top 5 schools or top whatever schools that I'm interested in. We'll talk with coaches. We'll figure some things out. Then it might be a money thing, yes. But please do not act like just because a player is looking, and I'm not even saying Xavian Lee's doing that. I want to make that clear as well, too. I'm not saying Xavian Lee's chasing a bag. I'm not involved in any recruitment like that to know that information. What I will say is that even if he is, who cares? He's got his list of schools that he's interested in. He's got his list of teams he wants to play for. At that point, if money is the deciding factor, he said, hey, I'd be happy at any of these schools. Just whichever one gives him the most money is which one I'm going to go to. That's his right. You would do the same thing if you had 4 companies that you were like, hey, I'm willing to work for these 4 companies happily. Like, these are my top 4 companies. I'm going to go to whichever one gives me the most money, the best benefits. Your friends or people wouldn't go, oh my God, look at that guy. No one would care. You shouldn't care either. Stop pocket watching. It's fine. Stop pocket watching there. Also, I will say it's college athletics, and it's a guy that's picking between these programs that are willing to spend on him. You don't have an issue with Florida going out there and spending. You don't have an issue with people going out there. You don't have an issue with people paying for players. You have an issue with Florida being outbid. That's the only issue, because even if he picks Florida, there's money involved. Get over it. Speaking of money, I like making that. We're going to talk about it next on Locked On Gators. The NBA playoffs are here, and FanDuel is giving new customers an incredible way to get in on the action. Right now, when you join FanDuel and place your first $5 bet, you'll get $250 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Before the season, I bet that Florida would win the national championship. Basketball. I bet it at plus 6,000. Okay? They ended up winning the national championship, which plus 6,000 is nice. If you're not a degenerate, plus 6,000 is saying, hey, I bet $100. If it happens, I win 6,000 additional dollars on top of your 100 back. It's beautiful. I already bet Florida to win the national championship again next year. Got it at plus 2,500. Don't miss out. Head to FanDuel.com and claim your $250 in bonus bets today. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free reviews in the podcast and on YouTube. And the Florida Gators are not just looking at Xavian Lee, right? We've talked about A.J. Brown before, the Philadelphia Eagles receiver. But actually, we talked about A.J. Brown, the Ohio Bobcats guard. We've talked about him before. We've talked about other players that Florida has targeted in the portal before, and obviously haven't walked away with, which I will say just on a quick note, I think we know which players Todd Golden was talking about when he mentioned, hey, I don't know why there's people committing right now. We're still playing games. And so I think that you could piece together which guards Florida was interested in at the start of the portal time and who didn't stay. And now, that's probably who he was talking about. A guard that Florida is looking at that's, again, Will Richard type, technically a guard, but more like a wing. That's what I mean when I say Will Richard type, that I'm like, hey, he's probably going to play small forward. I know people talk about Thomas Houck. I don't care to talk about the logistics right now. We don't know what the roster looks like. Let's not waste our time. Just being honest about it. But I do look at Cedric Coward as a Will Richard replacement. Cedric Coward only played in 6 games last season at Washington State, dealt with injuries. He was at Eastern Washington for 2 years before that. And he put out a top 5 yesterday that included Florida in it. And we'll talk about the rest of the top 5 in a little bit, but just know that I think that we're going to take this approach to similar how people talk about it with football of, who's recruiting him? Pretty good player if those are the teams, right? And so I think that we're going to take a similar approach there to it. But Cedric Howard, 6 games in Washington or at Washington State in 2024, dealt with injury there. He started all 6 games as well. So it's not like he wasn't playing much. It was genuinely that he was just injured. Was at Eastern Washington for 3 years before that. And now has 1 more year to come back, which is, Todd Golden recipe at this point now, like similar to getting Elijah Martin last year. 1 year left. Let's go win a championship doing it. In 2024, Cedric Coward shot 40% from 3. Okay. Again, keep in mind that when we talk about what happened in 2024 with Cedric Coward, we're talking about a small sample size, right? Because again, he played 6 games. He shot the ball, 61 times. 30 of them were threes. 3-point rate we've talked about before. We want it to be higher than 40% ish. Basically 50% here. Pretty good, right? So he shot 40% from 3 last season. The year prior at Eastern Washington, he shot 36.5% from 3 with significantly more volume. A lower 3-point attempted rate, but significantly more volume, okay? He also shot a lot of free throws in that time, which he also shot a good amount of free throws last year in his limited minutes. He played 6 games, and he shot 31 free throws. I feel like that's 5.15 free throws per game. I feel like that's a pretty good clip there. For someone that wasn't, one of the most highest usage players around. So I think that's a pretty good clip there. But shot 40% from 3 last year, 36.5% from 3 the year before. His effective field goal percentage last year was 65.6%. I think the number that we've talked about with Todd Golden before is 43.5% as a team. 65.6% is really going to help. The year prior, he had an effective field goal percentage of 62.3%. Last year, he doesn't qualify for any rankings, which makes sense, right? He was playing the non-conference games. So last year, he didn't qualify for any rankings. But the year prior, which, by the way, he played 1 game against a Tier A team last year. Wasn't an awesome one. Effective field goal percentage of 35%. Shot just 1 for 6 from 3, 2 for 4 from 2 for 2 from the free throw line. So wasn't great there. Again, we're going to be honest here. Can I see what game that was? That was Iowa. So that was the Iowa game there. Iowa game. Yeah, he had 2 for 4 from 2, 1 for 6 from 3, 2 for 2 from the free throw line. 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 turnovers, and a block, as well as 3 fouls. There you go. That's your information. But he had an effective field goal percentage of 65.6 last year. The year prior, he had a 62.3% effective field goal percentage, which is 36th in the country, and a true shooting percentage, which counts free throws, as a 14th in the country, 66.2%, because he shot 91.5% from the free throw line, which is 9th in the country last year, or 2024, 2023 to 2024. I hate how some of these numbers break up with basketball because a bunch of the seasons played in that season. So I get it. I just hate it. But Cedric Coward is a big-time three-point shooter from the wing, a good shot blocker for a wing. I mean, he had a 5.3% block percentage last year, 3.7% the year before. Like he's a great shot blocker from a 6'6" wing. Like that is a great percentage. For reference, Walter Clayton Jr. had a 1.6% block percentage. Alex Condon had a 5.5%. Sam Alexis had 5.5%. Will Richard at 1.1%. So we're talking about a guard that had a block rate of 5.3%, which is 0.2% below Alex Condon. That's what we're talking about. Cedric Coward has a top 5 of Florida, Duke, Alabama, Kansas, and Washington. That is an elite top 5, and according to On3, he's supposed to commit to a school soon, but will still test NBA waters. So his commitment will basically be, hey, if I come back to school, this is the school I'm going to play at. Florida's in that top 5. I don't care if it's money. I don't care what it is. Go get the kid. Simple as that. We are going to talk about Florida hiring an assistant coach in just a second with Locked On Gators. Thanks again for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free wherever you listen to the podcast and on YouTube. To wrap up today's show, we are talking about the Florida Gators hiring Dave Klatsky as an assistant coach now. And Klatsky, by the way, related to former Florida walk-on Alex Klatsky, just if that helps you at all, that's information for you to know. But they hired him as an assistant coach after losing 2 assistant coaches to head coaching jobs this year, which expected, right? You know, great teams have great coaches and great coaches get hired away. And so you lost 2 assistant coaches. One of the replacements is Dave Klatsky. He was the head coach at NYU since 2022. And one of the big differences there is that, well, head coach at D3 NYU, which, by the way, NYU, I am happy to have a New York program hired again because, you know, Florida traded Hovde to Columbia and now taking Klatsky from NYU, rival schools. Great. Awesome move there. NYU, again, considered a very prestigious D3 school, very, very highly touted program there. He was the head coach at NYU since 2022. In that time, NYU went 68-16 overall, which is obviously incredible. 68-16 overall in those years that he was the head coach there, with half of those losses, 8 of those losses, coming in his first season. He went 68-16, and 8 of the losses came in his first season. The next 2 years, 8 losses combined, which is just ridiculous, right? Won his conference the past 2 years, which the conference that NYU plays in is, ironically, if you're a Florida fan, UAA, which, woohoo, great, sure. But won the conference, won the UAA the past 2 years. This past year, made it all the way to the D3 championship game, lost that one 64-40, but got them there. That's the important part, right? We've seen great basketball coaches lose games they shouldn't lose because guys aren't hitting shots. I'm not saying that's what happened, but ultimately, you've got a guy with multiple years of results. You've got a guy with years of consistent results, and that's huge. So you add that. I will say that Dave Klatsky seems to be an offensive-minded coach more than anything else, which I know we don't really call them so much offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator, but the fact of the matter is that in college basketball, there are still guys who, hey, you are the guy that builds this offense and runs this offense, and hey, you are the guy that builds his defense and runs his defense. So he's more of an offensive guy, and I'm saying that based on reading what players have said to him or about him, based on reading what other coaches he's worked with have said to him or about him, based on where he's been, based on the style of play. He was an assistant at Colgate, also in New York, but kind of in like West Bumble, you know what, New York. He was an assistant there from 2011 to 2022 before getting hired by NYU. And on that back stretch, the offense at Colgate got considerably better. And look, I'm not hyping up Colgate to be this incredible program at all, right? Not saying that they're incredible. They're in the Pioneer League or the Patriot League. They are where they are. But you look at those last couple of years when he was there, right? 14-2 there. They had a 53rd ranked offense in the country, 5th in effective field goal percentage, 5th in turnover percentage. Like they were an awesome team. The year prior, 25-9, 41st in effective field goal percentage in the country, 21st in turnover percentage in the country. Like their offense, those final, I'll say 3 years, really picked up, and they were just awesome. Like they really picked up there. They got a lot better. The last year, they were 58.2% effective field goal percentage, first in the country. Like Dave Klatsky, an offensive-minded coach, very analytically oriented. That's why I chose to bring up, effective field goal percentage, and why I chose to bring up the 4 factors stats that we talked about before. So get ready to continue hearing about the 4 factors, because again, this is just another example of Todd Golden going to add more analytically minded coaches to the staff. Like that's always going to be a thing. We talked about it since Todd Golden got hired. We've talked about how Todd Golden will always like he's the analytics coach, right? I'm certain that, honestly, this offseason, you'll probably start to hear the conversations when we talk about who's the most analytically oriented coach, who's the guy that maximized analytics, who's the guy that most efficiently runs a team built on efficiency, runs that analytically oriented team. Who's the guy that is getting as close as possible to perfecting it? The conversation, when it's all said and done, is going to wrap up around Todd Golden, because he came into Florida, hired his staff, got his analytically minded guys, came in and won a national championship here. Okay. And now he's continuing to build a staff like that. And look, if Florida keeps winning games and keeps performing the way that they perform, you're going to see more turnover. Nick Saban assistants, they come in for a year or two and they're gone, right? You're going to continue to see coaches come and go at Florida. It's the price of being great, right? Before we go, I will wrap this up by saying one thing that I find, I don't even know if you'd say like interesting or notable, but whatever it was interesting to me, because I don't know if I've ever really said this before. I have a degree in economics, like that's what my degree is in. So numbers and all that stuff, super fun. Yeah, sure. But Dave Klatsky is a very analytically minded coach, but he also used to work as an equity trader. And his first assistant coach job with, I think it's Stevens Tech in Hoboken, his first assistant coach job there, he worked as an assistant coach while still working as an equity trader, which is just, that's insane to me. But it's also just a really cool fun fact about a guy that clearly has a relentless work ethic, and that's fun to see. Thanks for making Locked On Gators your first listen of the day every day. We are available daily and free for listening to the podcast and on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow, talk more Florida Gators football, basketball. We'll see. For Locked On Gators, I'm Brandon Olson. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter at WNS_Brandon. Find all my written work with New York Giants on SI, and I will see you all next time.